In this tutorial video, we're going to demonstrate how we created the digital printer magazine cover, which was done in partnership with HP Indigo on the HP Indigo 12,000 digital press and Igersund on their metallized paperboard for the Indigo devices. So the way that ColorLogic works is we are a color communication system and software company, and we create decorative palettes and plugins for the printing industry to allow you to take advantage of what the printing press can do and to generate some quite interesting separations and techniques that are pretty much impossible to do without our solution, purely because of the way that white ink separations are created. Now that's the very important thing, is that this has been printed onto a metallized board and then it has a white ink separation printing down on top of it. Now with white ink, you cannot see opaque white ink on your computer screen, so you have to give it a false colour normally. And then you have to block out all the areas that you don't want to be metallic. So for example, on this design here, where we have the outside rim of the clock face here, this area should be non-metallic because it's a white. But we put maybe metallic in this area here. So you're literally creating contrasting knockout masks, and it's very time consuming, very complex, and you have to think in reverse. So that's often why a lot of designs, when they're printed onto metallized boards, are pretty much very simple. You know, the whole design looks metallic with just one maybe element blocked out in white. So what ColorLogic does is it empowers the designers to be able to add decorative effects and white ink separations automatically to the file as they're designing. Now I'm not going to show you how all the techniques work today. What I'm going to do is break down the design and show you how we actually created this using our system. So first of all, we created a background gradient. So this is a blue gradient, and we've got two start and end point colours. So it's actually based on using a ColorLogic separation on top of the coloured spectrum. So here we're doing, like I say, a light blue to a dark blue. If I wanted to change that, I can do. I can have any colour I want using the ColorLogic system. So we could, for example, let's go to our palette of colours. If I decided I wanted it to be green on this end, then I can do so. It's just a case of simply swapping out the colours for whatever you want to design. So here, like I said, we did a light blue to a dark blue. That creates our background gradient effect. Next, we started adding what we call dimensional effect. So this is a vector graphic which we've gone through, and basically what it does when we're using the dimensional effect tools and palettes is it creates almost like a knockout mask within inside the design. So it's literally putting a white ink separation behind certain areas. So what I'm going to do here is just open up my separation preview tab and show you the ColorLogic separation where we're at the moment. So no matter how many colours and effects I use, we always have CMYK and then the ColorLogic separation. So what you're seeing here as silver, that is the silver substrate. And this white area is the white ink mask. So that is automatically created as we're designing our effects using our decorative palettes. And we have multiple palettes depending on what type of techniques you want to achieve, whether it's a dimensional or a watermark. So from there, let's just turn back on the CMYK. What happens is when we print this, and because you've got your magazine cover, move it around and you'll see these areas changing from lighter to darker. It's like it goes from a light blue to a dark blue as you move the print. That's all done using our dimensional effect palette. Next, we started adding in some of the watch face. So we have a drop shadow. Now this is a great thing here because when you're working with white ink separations, you have to take into account different types of effects that are created by the designer. In Illustrator specifically, you have many options to change the appearance of a separation or a colour or a vector graphic. So here we're doing an overprint, which is fine, like a multiplying the effect. But if that was set to something like screen or reverse knockout or some kind of different type of effect, then how do you calculate that into your white ink separation? Okay, so building upon the watch face, we then put in a background. We then started adding in layers of cogs. So these are our background cogs, which we had in CMYK. That gives it some depth in the background. Then we added in some metallic cogs in the foreground. So notice how we don't have everything metallic. But what we're doing here is, let's just turn off the CMYK and you can see. When we, oops, haven't got the metallic effect on there. We added the metallic effect to the cogs. And you'll see now, if we just zoom in and turn this off, the CMYK, you'll see that not every cog is metallic. And that's because we want contrast in there. We want to have contrasting areas. So if we put CMYK in the background here and these foreground elements in metallic, that gives us depth of field in your image. So that's very important for when you're working with metallics. Then we added in the outer watch face. Now here we put in a band of metallic around the outside edge. Now, just to show you this is actually done using a gradient mesh tool in Illustrator to create this change of gradation through from a lighter to a darker. So how would you do a white ink knockout mask manually when you've got a gradient mesh working in the opposite direction to which you want to go? Because you want to put metallic in some areas but not as much metallic in the others, because you need that natural transition of light to dark. With Color Logic, all we have to do is apply the colors and effects to these different things, and we can work with gradient meshes. We can do anything we want at the design level. It's very, very simple. Next, we added in some shadows. So you can see how there we added in shadows around the watch face here, and added in the clock numerals as well. Then we added in a reflection from the actual, when you get the bubble on your watch face. Now let's just zoom into that again. So this has been created in a very unique way. This is using an opacity of 65%. So this is what designers do. They don't just have everything as solid. So that is set to 65% is going to reduce my metallic effect in the background as well. So if I turn off my CMYK, you can see here that the metallic effect is naturally being reduced. So again, how would you calculate that into your white ink separation doing it manually? You've got to think the opposite way, because if you want to reduce it by 65%, then obviously you're going to have a 35% difference in that metallic effect. So again, this is why designers don't do very well in white ink separations, because it's extremely complex. But with Color Logic, we just click and apply. Next, we added in some shadows behind the back of the watch hands. And the watch hands here we've done it as gold. Now we've done gold so we can prove to people that you can print gold and silver at the same time on the sheet. You do not need a gold piece of paper. We create gold through our colour palettes and plugins from our swatch books. So from here, let's just have a look at these files, this image area here. So what we're doing here is we're creating contrasting areas of metallic to non-metallic to metallic to non-metallic to metallic. And that gives a natural transition of where the light can bounce off different areas of the print. And that's what makes your print come alive. It's all about getting contrast into your design. Then we added in the masthead information at the top, and when we went to press there was actually information on the bottom about what subjects were going to be in the magazine. But we're just going to put a placeholder text in there for now. So there we have it. The cover has been worked up using our digital palettes and plugins. And let's just have a look at the separation that's created. So as you can see, that's the file. So from here, what I want to do now is, it's like, how do you know what this is going to look like unless you send it to the printer and have a proof done off the press? That's normally the traditional way of doing it. And if you've made a mistake in your file, you either have to go backwards and forwards, making iteration proofs. So with a manual working process, it becomes very costly for the brand and for the agency, for everybody along the supply chain. But with Color Logic, we have a piece of software called the FX Viewer. So the FX Viewer is a three-dimensional virtual room environment. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to save this as a PDF file. There's no trickery involved. You save it as your normal PDF file. I'm just doing it as a press quality one because we don't have any predefined settings here. And what we're going to do now is we'll see on our desktop we have the PDF that's been created. And we're going to come back to that in a moment. But first of all, I'm also going to work on the back cover. So the back cover was done slightly different. This one here, again, as we've done before, wherever you see the silver is the silver substrate, and wherever you see the white is going to be white ink. So no matter, we don't design white, we never have to. As you can see here, there's nothing physically there, but that will print with white when it goes through the indigo press. So what we're doing is we're designing where we want to see the metallic, not where we don't want to. So here we have a natural gradation of metallic from solid blending out to transparent. And that gives us a natural transition around. We have a solid foil, HB Indigo's in solid foil, and we've got Color Logic's logos in foil as well. But this, interestingly, in the background is one of our decorative patterns. It's called Pattern Effects. Now I can go on, and let me just lock some of these layers so I can pick up the elements. I can pick up that element here, and I can select the pattern layer within inside my Appearance tab. And I can go to my patterns, and I can change them to something else. So for example, if I wanted to, let's use one of the other pattern techniques. I'm going to use, let's have a look. Let's use this one here. I'm going to click and apply. And what that's doing is it's changing the pattern automatically. So these are predefined as each of our decorative effects, whether they're metallics, it can be done as a dimensional effect pattern or a watermark. The watermarks are there for subliminal appearing and disappearing. We also have the ability to create these patterns as like a varnish layer for doing things like Scodex or for the clear toners on the digital presses. We also have the ability to do the embossing, so you can create raised tactile print finishes using these patterns. So each pattern comes with 6 different effects. Now let's just turn off the CMYK. So you'll see here that this silver area is the silver substrate, the white is your white ink mask. So we're going to get this really nice contrasting metallic effect happening. Now if I change my pattern, there you go, change my pattern, you'll see obviously the mask changes. So we can have these as variable data if we wanted to. You can have them swapping in and out automatically. We can also edit those files further. If we wanted to, we could rotate them. So let's just rotate that by, oops, let me just zoom in as well so you can see the pattern rotating. Try that one again. Make sure you don't have transform object selected. And I'm just going to transform the pattern. Let's just preview that. So you can see now we've changed it. So just by rotating it, we've actually made the pattern look slightly different. Now what we could also do is scale that pattern. So again, in here, make sure you've got the transform object switched off. And if we wanted to then view that at 200%, that's fine. And I've now got my patterns. So patterns are a great thing for adding these extra effects to your designs. In the background, they're great for using on things like, greeting cards, big box packaging for branded products. Now, another thing I want to show you is how these highlight flashes are created. So again, these are typical things of what designers do. Now I could create these flashes just by doing a blue to white gradient and be done with it, but that's not the way that designers work. Designers work like this. So if I look at the flashes, those flashes are just black and white, and they're actually using a screen setting, which basically means it kind of like knocks out the color below it. So when I place that over the top, it's changing the color and appearance, so it's no longer black. So again, these are things that you have to try and take into account when you're working with a white ink separation. So again, this is why designs typically look pretty terrible when they're printed onto foil. So when we save this, because this design here has got this decorative pattern in here, we need to save it in a different PDF format. And it's basically PDFX3, and that's because of the rendering engine for our FX viewer. So the FX viewer needs a special type of flattened PDF file for doing these patterns. But that's explained in our user manual. Okay, so I've now made my 2 files. So first of all, let's take the first one, the FX viewer visualization of the front cover. So what's happening in the background here, there's a RIP that's running. It's going to process that file from PDF data into TIFF files. It can be then rendered in our 3D viewing environment. The viewing environment can show you both silver ink printing. So for example, if you have the HP Indigo on the 6900 with their silver ink, you can visualize this file on there with silver, or you can visualize it with metallic substrate. Now the way this works is it's a 3-dimensional spherical room environment, so you can go all the way around if you like, and you'll see we have light sources coming in from different directions, but also shadow. That's very important. That's going to then bounce off our print. So we're going to visualize printing onto foil. First of all, let's just show you the metallic ink. So if you were printing this on metallic ink with the HP Indigo 6900, then we can visualize that effect. But obviously we're visualizing printing onto foil. So now we can see the design done in foil. Now let's just zoom in a little bit so we can actually see these cogs. Let's move this up a bit. So you can see here that the way we've designed it, the light's reflecting off these cog areas. But what we also did was we didn't have everything on the cog metallic. We had this part metallic, and then this little line was in CMYK. Then this is metallic, CMYK, metallic, CMYK. So we get this light changing contrast, and you notice how it's more photorealistic. It's actually looking real life because you've got these contrasting areas. It makes it look 3-dimensional rather than flat. And that's a great thing about the ColorLogic system, is it brings your print to life and it makes it do things that you just simply cannot do without using the ColorLogic system. Or if you try to do it, it would take you so many hours and it'd be so tiring and complex that most people wouldn't do it because you just don't have the budget to do such work. So there we have the ColorLogic separation file for the digital printer magazine cover. Now I'll also render the other file, which was the back cover. Now, because we're doing this in the FX viewer, if we're then happy with this, we can then send that PDF across to the press, and it'll be on the press within no time at all. Okay, so now I'm going to visualize this onto foil, and again you can see here how our patterns are working. Notice how the patterns here, you've got this dark line, so you've got this dark kind of pattern with a light background. Now watch what happens when I move it. So when I move it out of the light, the dark lines went light and the background went dark. So let me show you that again. Notice how it's going, that transitional change. So that's what we call dimensional effect, and it adds movement to your print. Now obviously we have the silver foiled effects here and the ColorLogic logo. So it's a great way to be able to add simple effects to your design very quickly, but it would be extremely complex without our system. So we hope you like what you've seen on the magazine cover spread. For more information, please contact us at support@color-logic.com. Please also take the time to review the small videos below this one, which show you how the dimensional effects techniques were created, and hopefully we will speak to you again soon. Thank you and have a great day.